All right, we are on air. Today is Thursday, August 13th, and this is our Bckdrop design and user experience meeting. Before we get into items on the agenda, let's go around and do some introductions, starting with Greg.
Hey, my name is Greg. I'm joining from Greece. Just catching up with the latest on design and see if I can help.
All right, Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim, or St. Paul Tim. I'm coming from Deerwood, Minnesota, and I'm particularly interested in the CSS updates to Bckdrop or to Basis today.
Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, and I'm a backend developer. I'm just kind of here to listen.
And Jason.
Jason from Las Vegas also. I'm also here just basically to listen to the conversation. I'm a backend developer, interested in front-end improvements though.
Great. I'm Jen Lampton, calling from Oakland, California. I am also interested in all the things. We have a section in this weekly or fortnightly meeting specifically to cover the theme initiative and recommended changes. We've had 3 issues, sort of large scale issues we've been talking about in this meeting for a while now. I don't know that we've gotten any updates on those since our last meeting, but just to highlight them again, one of them is to promote recommended feature complete themes in the same way that we promote recommended modules. So there's a whole bunch of stuff related to that. Greg, are you raising your hand because you have things you want to add to that item, or are you just stretching your fingers?
Sorry, no, I was just stretching.
Okay. I was like, I didn't know you were like, I have something to say. Like, okay, well, maybe we do have an update. And that's something that has a lot of moving parts. The main issue in our core queue is 4445, but there's also parallel in the project module, and there's stuff related to modules that also needs to get addressed there.
Can I say something or ask a question about that?
Sure.
So this idea of approved themes. So one of the questions I keep asking, which I'm not sure if it's resonating with other people or not, which has made me doubt whether or not I'm on the right track, but is like, what are the criteria for being approved?
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've just been trying to do is find time myself to do some experimenting so I could give more concrete examples. And we have a relatively new theme, Pellerine, which if people haven't looked at it, I recommend they do. Just probably not a theme I would use myself, but because it's a really, like if you're doing a basic blog, I think it applies to the Ready to Wear initiative because this is it fills a gap that's something I don't think we've had really good options for, where it's just a plug and play if you've got a really simple kind of site theme and you can change backgrounds. And one of the things I noticed right away was that if I inserted a logo into this theme, it broke. So that's been fixed. I filed a pull request and we got that fixed. But that sort of helps me illustrate like what I'm talking about. It's like you can just open up a theme and it might look good on any particular site, but in order for it to be approved, it seems to me we need to know, like, have a certain checklist of things that we know works. Like, you know, we might assume that you can add a logo through, you know, to a theme to be approved.
Yep.
Other things like that. And so I don't know, I just kind of I'm raising this partly because I sort of had this concrete example this week, and also just to sort of get feedback on, isn't that part of what we need to, and my hope was that once we got the sort of demo site set up with, and that to me, that is to somewhat, that's the importance of the sample content in this sort of demo site, is that we can make sure we have the kinds of sample content in there that we want, that we would expect in the kind of site that we want themed, and then we can better test. We're not just displaying these themes, but also in a way testing them, right, to see if they work. Does that all make sense? Am I okay?
Yep.
So I
I
think that
think
this
yeah.
list of requirements for what a recommended theme has is going to continue to grow as we run into problems like this. So I just added your item to that list for now. But
Right.
I think that, you know, because we've never asked this question before, like we don't have a complete list right now. All we
Right.
have, you know, the stuff that we can think of, and as we run into new things, but like, oh, we should have thought of that too. So I added your item as the fifth to the list. Works both with and without a logo. I think that's also important. If you have an example one that works with a logo, if you take it out, if your whole like menu gets broken or something, that's also going to be a problem.
Right.
But yeah, and I would say, Tim, you have a lot of experience with using a bunch of contrib themes and trying them on when they're
Mhm.
you know, new. So I would say if you, as you find things where you're like, oh, it's going to be important that, you know, we support whatever it is, we'll just put that in the list also. And you know, we can talk about the list at various points in time if we feel like it's getting too big, or if we want to have a check up on all of that stuff. But for now, it's just kind of a brainstorm list. And I think until we have, you know, themes that are promoted in sample content and all of this stuff, it's gonna sort of be in flux. So right now, just so everybody knows where that list lives, is in issue 4445. It says a feature complete theme must include : and there's only 5 things there. And so I think as we continue to work on what this criteria is, that list will get longer. There's also WordPress has a pretty good example. It's in the second or third comment on that page from Dryer about what's required for their themes to be approved. And I think it might be good to take a look at that and see if there are parallels we might want to pull between Bckdrop themes and WordPress themes. They might have some good ideas too. I haven't looked at that in detail. I sort of glanced at it and was like, oh, this is a fantastic reference, and haven't used it to modify our list. But I think it might be a good place to get some seed ideas to start from.
That's all.
So yeah, it's a little bit tricky right now because we're trying to do all the things at once. Like we're trying to decide on a criteria, we're trying to set up some sample content, we're trying to choose some approved themes. And I think that all of them are going to sort of grow at different speeds. And we just need to figure out how to do it in the way that makes the most sense.
So what would the process be? Anyone can recommend, I see that there's an item there that will create a template, an issue template in Contrib for promoting or nominating things. And then ideally we would have the checklist and also a process on how to sort of like test each one of the points so that it doesn't fall on the responsibility doesn't fall on people who know how to do these things already. So if we had a guide, so it says support all 10 core layouts. So maybe we want to break that down into what it means and like have instructions as in spin up a demo, install the theme, check this and that, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the things that we want to be supported should eventually be in the style guide module. And so it will say like, turn on the style guide module, visit this page, this page, this page, this page, and all of those pages will have like, there will be one for each core layout. You have to make sure that they all like seem sort of okay. And then there will also be views in there that'll be our example basic views. So we could be like, go to this page and make sure all of the blocks on it render properly. But right now we don't have, you know, that's like the pipe dream where we want to get. Right now we don't have all of that stuff in the style guide module. I have a bunch of sample layout with, you know, just like lorem ipsum content in it that I've been using, but I think that we, you know, should aim for something better than that long term. But I thought that might be a good starting point for style guide to include, just like here's layouts with content in them, and we can adjust, like once we know what views are, we could like put those views in the layouts in various different places. So again, I think it's going to be a super iterative process in terms of, you know, at the end of the day, it'll be like, turn on style guide, make sure everything looks good, and that's all you need to do. But right now it's like, we don't have these things yet. So just trying to figure out how to get people to be able to do the testing is going to be tricky.
Yeah. Style guide usually has HTML component styling and things like that. I'm not sure how it would fit for the first point, like support for on-fault and core layouts. Ideally, we would have in the test site 10 pages, 10 sample pages that each one uses the layout, and people can switch to that theme, resize their browser, try different, so that it's what you call it, responsive and things like that. But most of it can go in the style. You're right.
Yeah, so I'm working on a version of the style guide module that has a install hook that will add all of the layouts, just import the config. But I'm not entirely sure, like maybe that should be like a sub module style guide. I don't know, like the exact like end result of what that'll look like might be very different from what it is right now, but at least it's something. I'm working on something. Yeah, but I think who knows, like I think also having like a sample site that already has this stuff on it would also be really easy for people, like, okay, on your local site, turn on style guide and make sure it looks good, but then before we promote it, like check it somewhere else. Here's a sample site you can turn on over there, would also be really good, because I feel like things are really different from site to site, and having more than one place to test it is gonna be really helpful.
Yeah, as you said earlier, I'm sure there's going to be problems that are going to be surfacing, and we're going to be adding to that list of checks. But yeah, I think it's going to evolve directly anyways.
Yeah.
We have a new person that's joined the chat as well, right? Mahmudo, if I pronounce that correctly. Hello.
Welcome. If you would like to introduce yourself, we have previously said what our name is, where we're from, and if there's anything particularly you would like to mention about this meeting, you're welcome to do that. I'm not sure if you have audio, but if you do, feel free to interrupt or add a comment in the chat and let us know. We can read that too.
Oh, there he is. Welcome.
All right, so we also have, so since we were just talking about it, the next item on the theme initiative is make all themes better by providing standard elements. Those were the layouts, the views, the kinds of things that we think every theme should support. And it doesn't have to be super detailed, just like a view of teasers generally. And I think we can create a view that contains that and include it in the style guide, or just as a config file that someone can import on their local site would also be useful. And then the third issue that we're working on is find a way to make it easier to preview themes, both for desktop and mobile. We have a bunch of different ideas about how to do this, whether it's a demo site that you can put different themes on, or whether it's a way to install themes on your local site, or whether it's a preview button, or multi-site install, or a tugboat setup. We have a lot of different pipe dreams about how to do that. I'm not sure that there's a specific issue anywhere yet about it, but it is something that we know is something that we want. We want to make it easier for people to preview and select themes for their own sites. And so we need to figure out one or more solutions to that problem to start moving forward on. And then I don't know if there's anything else we need to specifically talk about for Ready to Wear initiative. There's no updates here from Luke, so I'm going to assume not, and we'll move on. The next section of the agenda is about design and usability updates for Bckdrop CMS itself. We have a couple of user experience issues that have been long-standing pain points, at least for Gregory and I. There was this issue about getting modules promoted in the installer. This also now applies to themes. I don't think there's been any update on that particular issue in a while, but it is still in our mind as something that we would like to get.
Yeah, we have a pretty good idea of what needs to happen. There's a lot of moving parts. I think we got some of the b.org parts in place, which is a checkbox to just use it as a flag of a project being promoted. We just need to now make sure that this information is being included in the feed that each site consumes as an update, or sorry, for the project installer.
We also have this issue to move the clear log messages button, 2353. It had like 100 some comments on it. People apparently feel very passionately about the location of the button. Its current pull request is marked needs work. The issue itself is marked needs more feedback. I was thinking recently that this might be a good kind of issue since it seems to be no obvious consensus in the issue queue. It might be something we could escalate to the project management committee and be like, hey, a lot of people have different feelings on this issue. Here's the summary of it. Here's the issue in the queue if you want to read the whole conversation. Please let us know if we should move in any of the directions stated or not. Because another option is just leave it as it is, rather than making a change. And I thought that if we feel like we're not able to make a clear decision based on the conversation and the issue, maybe it would be something we could escalate to say, hey, this is something that could cause conflict in the community. It's now a conflict resolution issue. And then they could decide which way to go on that.
Well, if we sorted out issue 566, which is make form submit button sticky, maybe that would be a solution to that problem.
Well, this isn't a page that has a form submit button on it.
Well, it's a button. We can stick it there. Make it sticky and
But I don't know
close
if we
those.
put a delete button where there's usually a submit button. That might be a whole new can of worms.
Well, here's the point I take away from this is that there might be 2 or 3 issues currently in the issue queue that are in a similar sort of bind. And if we're going to escalate some things, it might make sense to package them. Like, here's a couple of issues. I don't know, as opposed to just one at a time. Because I'm thinking from the PMC's point of view, it might be like, let's focus for 2 weeks on because we haven't really addressed any issues like this for a year. And I don't know, it just feels to me like it might be helpful to have a couple of them going at once because I don't know, I'm just talking.
Yeah, I definitely think like if we wanted to push a bunch of stuff to PMC and say, hey, here's a couple of examples of issues where we weren't able to reach consensus, that would be good. But I think that we should have them resolvable one at a time so that we
Sure.
wouldn't have all 3 at once. But I think you're right, like it would be good to have here are a bunch of examples of this happening so people can get a feeling for like, what does it look like when there's not consensus? And is there actually any conflict, or is this just something we need direction on? Yeah, I like
Well,
that.
especially if there is any overlap. Like, I'm not sure if there is, but Gregory was seeing some overlap between those 2 issues. So it would make sense to sort of deal with them together. Maybe it might not.
So I don't really know. We don't really have a clear process established for how to escalate an issue when it's not specifically
Has
requested.
it ever happened? Has he ever had to step in on sort of resolving this kind of conflict?
There was one
No.
issue that Mike escalated to the PMC when he was on the PMC. And it says that like any PMC member can escalate an issue to the PMC if they feel like they see something going on, they can move it. But we've also had other places where people who weren't on the PMC wanted an issue to be escalated. And that's not currently, like there's no specific instructions on how that can happen. But I think that that's a valid thing too. Like it could, you know, we've got 2,000 issues. It's likely that there are issues that none of the PMC members have seen. And if one of those is getting, you know, heated, it would be good if we could have some way for those people to request, you know, someone else to make a decision on it. So yeah, I think we might need a clear process on that. Like, I don't know whether it's throw it in a weekly agenda or fill out a web form or post it in a forum, or I don't know what it's going to be. But I think having some process there for people to do that would be good. I also don't know, like as a PMC member, I'm also a little sensitive of being like, I don't want to say we need to escalate it unless the other people in the conversation want to have it escalated, because I don't want to feel like it's getting taken out of their hands if they feel
Right.
like they're making progress on it.
Yeah.
So I'm also a little sensitive to being like, if someone asks me to take this to the PMC, I will, but I'm not necessarily comfortable making that call, which I think is also hard because right now the PMC members are the only ones that are empowered to do that, yet we're all waiting for someone else to ask.
Right.
So that might be something that would be good to talk about maybe in today's weekly meeting and see like, okay, you know, should we have some very cut and clear criteria? Like an issue gets more than 100 comments, it's fine for anyone to escalate. Like something like very, very clear like that, then at least you're not feeling like you're making a decision that other people might not want you to make. It also might be worthwhile to always have someone say like, post a comment, would you like this escalated? Yes, no, and see if there are like maybe at least 3 yes responses or something like that.
Right.
I'm not really sure what those criteria should be.
Yeah.
It's something we should think about, and maybe I'll just push this to the dev meeting today to see if anyone in that meeting also has thoughts on it. But I am starting to see it happen more often, which makes me a little excited because that means that our community is really active and passionate. But I also want to make sure we're not making anybody burn out because of it.
If my memory serves me well, I think the last time that something was escalated, it wasn't purely because of technical sort of like directional issues. It was because of the language and the tone being used in the.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the last time that it was escalated, it was it was a technical disagreement, but it was mainly the tone of like the language being used, and that's why it was escalated. It wasn't escalated with the intention to provide direction, but I agree with what was said.
I don't think that issue ever got escalated. That was something that were in the PMC queue. Everybody was like, should we intervene? But it wasn't ever, it didn't come from the community requesting an intervention. And it did eventually resolve itself where it didn't have to be escalated. But that was another instance where I think really having clear guidelines around when the PMC should intervene would be really helpful. Yeah.
At the end, I recall as well that it was a cultural difference of how forward people are, and that's it. So it got resolved, as you say, on its own. Good. But I agree with what you said before that we should be using de-escalation for technical disagreements as well.
Yeah.
So, Tim, which issues were you thinking? What was the CSS issue one?
I don't know if that's there yet.
Yeah, I don't think.
And we'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, I think. Well, no. I mean, to be honest, I don't know that. I know that there have been moments in the last 2 weeks where I've seen issues and thought we might be close to that, but off the top of my head, so at least one of them was that password indicator one, and I think that seems to be resolving itself.
Yeah.
So that was it just sort of reached the point where I thought it was log jammed, and then it suddenly broke free. So I don't know what other ones.
So yeah, a good indicator is if you sort the issues by most commented.
Yep.
Yeah, usually that's
that
when.
One, I think that one had like 150 comments. It was.
Yeah, 129 currently, yes. And then the clear log messages button is 91 messages, and after that, for some reason, the add references module to core, which there's no disagreement there. It's just that, history adds comments, like historically added comments. Yeah. But I agree that if we get stuck, if not PMC escalation, maybe sometimes it's a technical decision. So maybe our core committers instead of PMC.
Well, I think that's why the PMC has access to like the leadership group, is so that if there's something where you want core committer feedback, PMC can say, hey, core committers, we need input on whatever. But I think the decision still needs to come from the PMC and not from the committers. But they need to know how the committers feel about it.
Well, if we move on to the next issue, there's some overlap with this because I could see this getting there. It's not there yet. And also, can I sort of make the transition?
Yes, go for it.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So next on the agenda, all right, we would be moving into the design issues, or is there anything else on UX first?
Go ahead. Design.
Okay, so this white gap between two hero blocks, as we alluded to, I guess it might have been before the meeting started, is a CSS issue in Basis. And there's been a discussion going on about how to safely make changes in Basis to the Basis CSS without breaking old sites. Well, or whether or not that's even an issue if we break old sites, I guess. And this is one where, again, I don't think we've gotten to the point where we're deadlocked, but I see, I mean, to me, I think that there's a bit of a philosophical difference, and it might be that this can be sorted out between folks who kind of view Basis as primarily something to be sub-themed, and don't really envision it being used like as an out-of-the-box theme a lot. And folks like myself who feel like Basis could be a really useful tool to users if we could just fix some things in it. And I'm just sort of saying that some of the issues I raise, there seems to be a lot of negative feedback, like, oh, we don't really need to address. There's easy alternatives for fixing those. And to me, that's sort of suggesting, like, if you're a themer, this is an easy problem to fix, so we shouldn't even worry about it. And I agree that for themers, these problems aren't a big deal. But if the goal is to have like an easy to use tool for somebody who's not creating a sub-theme and they're just trying to configure Basis to work as a powerful, flexible theme, then we need to fix these. And this idea about providing supplemental style sheets, it's like some people, you know, we've got one of the options is that we just go ahead and fix some of these small things, recognizing that it could break previous sites. And personally, I'm not comfortable with that. If the goal is to have a powerful, flexible theme for people to use out of the box, but a number of people seem to be falling behind that, like, oh, it's not a big deal if these little things break. We just warn people about it and let them deal with it.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that is this maybe not a technical dispute, but more of a philosophical dispute about what the purpose of Basis is.
Yeah, I think I would agree that the issue, we started talking about something technical, and what people end up commenting on is not the technical aspects of it, but the philosophical aspects, where I'm also seeing people saying, it doesn't matter if there are CSS bugs, leave it as it is, then you won't break anything, which I agree with you, Tim. That makes it harder for people who don't know how to fix the CSS on their own. And I would love it if we could find a way that we could help them with that. And then we see other people saying, it doesn't matter if we break existing sites, we'll just tell them that we're going to break existing sites and then they're going to break it. But that also is the same problem as the first problem, where if you are a less technical person and you've already hired someone to fix your site, or you've already somehow figured out how to compensate for the problem, and then your site breaks later, you're still stuck without a solution being able to fix it without knowing how to write that code yourself. And I'm not sure I like either of those philosophical positions, where don't ever fix anything because it might break, or fix all the things and who cares if it breaks or not. And so that's why I was kind of landing on like going for a really technical, complicated solution, because we can solve all the problems, but then that also like reintroduces everybody saying, whoa, this is way too complicated. But yeah, I think it would be good to something like that, where you could kick it to the PMC and say, like, weigh all of the possible solutions against the philosophy, which is something that we're supposed to look at, be like, okay, like we're supposed to value people who can't write code over people who can write code, or at least the needs of those people. So we should say, you know, just write CSS for it is not an answer. But also, I would really like existing sites to not get broken. And I know that the use case we're talking about in this particular case is not as limited as people think it is. I've run into the problem with this white gap on a bunch of sites that I've done, and I've never used a flexible layout template. So I think it's just coming up with like that's a really great way to reproduce the problems, to use a flexible template. You can see it that way, but that's not the only place it comes up. And I think that a lot of the things we're running into are problems where we don't necessarily know all of the places where an implication could appear. And so we need to be really careful with it. I think in general, like, don't change anything if you don't have to is a good idea. But when is the do you have to part apply is the tricky part. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I want to be the one to make that call. I think having a more controlled place where we'll be like, okay, we've got 7 people, let's have them vote. Will be a much clearer. Be like, well, the vote said X, and then it's not. I didn't make a decision. You didn't make a decision. It just kind of came out that way. I think would also be good because I'm not sure there's a right answer. I'm not also sure there's a wrong answer. It's just a lot of people have strong opinions about it. So yeah, that's the kind of thing where I thought pushing that to the PMC, though maybe not necessary, might be appreciated by a bunch of people, just because then it sort of takes the heat out of the conversation and be like, okay, it's not up to us anymore. Give it to someone else to have a conversation about it.
Well,
it's funny. It's funny as well because for this specific issue, the people involved most of them are either in the leadership or the PMC. So, and I don't want to sort of derail the discussion, but we might be arguing for a thing that might not be worth the trouble. And let me explain what I mean. If we had metrics, we would have known how many sites are actually using basis or a sub-theme of basis as their default theme.
But that's not the only place
so if it was
applies either.
Yes, sure. We need to make a decision because that says decide. The title of the issue is decide on the best way. I know it says for basis, but it sets sort of like a precedent of decisions, right? Go ahead, Tim. No, go ahead.
Metrics won't necessarily help us because it might be that nobody's using basis in this way because it's broken. So if we had matrix, they would say, well, nobody uses basis that way. We don't need to fix it. Well, metrics isn't always the solution. What I think that what I don't understand about this debate is the people who are arguing for these other positions about like, let it break or whatever seem to be doing because they think the alternative is very complicated. And I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think there is a relatively simple solution that allows us to upgrade new sites. And it seems like people have already decided this is too confusing that they're not even looking at it. So, like people keep saying the solution is confusing or complicated, but they're not addressing the specifics of what we proposed. They're saying the abstract idea is complicated, but nobody's like looked at the pull request and said, well, this is why the solution is complicated.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. I think if there was some code that was like, look, it changes 2 files, it would be.
There is actually code, and I did take a look at it. So if we go back to the specific issue and not theoretically talk about what we do in these cases, I did take a look. In the way that it works in theory is simple, but the technical depth that we will leave about doing these things, it's not as simple. And if you noticed, I also filed an issue about logging the initial sort of like, I don't want this list of CSS versions to grow extremely big. So that was always in the back of my head. I don't know. I think that I need to give merit to the things that you say, Tim, that we should consider not breaking stuff. And if it's a small sort of like, as in a few lines of code change, we should do it. But I think that the most of the people that participate in this discussion that are the more technical people, like the core commuters, they've seen these sort of things creep into the code and, down the line cause further issues, cause things to become unmaintainable. That's the problem. Having said that, I don't think that we shouldn't do anything about it. One thing that I would like to mention, because this has been sort of like been mentioned in a very sort of like simplistic way, and it doesn't give it credit, is that we are not proposing to just break sites, right? This change won't be coming very often. It won't happen as often, or history has proven that it hasn't been happening that often. And if we make sure that we introduce the change in a minor release instead of a bug fix with well-documented sort of like, I mean, from my experience, when you upgrade a site to a next minor version or a major version, the people that are doing the update are being more cautious because they know there's more change involved, and they do read the README about it. So in the README, we have a section where we say you need to update config, settings.php if there were changes, right? So we could have a section that says there's a potentially breaking change introduced in the README. I'm not saying that we should, I'm saying that we could do that. And back to the issue at hand thing, like the 4167 is a general decision thing. Back on the specific issue, we should fix that gap thing. Like no one's disagreeing that we shouldn't fix it, right?
Well, I'm not motivated to fix it if I think it's going to break people's sites.
I am
Yeah, fair.
agree with George
Sorry?
because the existing site is more important. So minor version is update with basis and go with slowly, not do with major update because existing customer is very important. So we can move with minor version, then we are going through where we want to go. So as a rolling release, not a major update like Drupal goes to 7 to 9. We want to go as a path. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. And the releases, the reason why I mentioned the minor releases is because we know when they come out, like they come at specific dates throughout the year. So if we tell people that, look, we've made this change, which may be potential, and point them, say, if you're using the hero blocks, then this may cause that problem, and this is how you may fix it. So if we are very thorough in this specific case, I don't think it's going to be such a big issue. But yeah, that's my personal opinion. But I think that issue, as Tim says, qualifies to be escalated to PNC.
So, well, I never said that. It's, to me, it's like what I'd like for people to do is tell me why the supplemental sheets are so complicated, and then I would have a better understanding. Right now, I'm just frustrated because I'm not understanding. People are sort of saying, no, your idea is dumb because it's too complicated, without telling me why it's too complicated.
Major update, always the user is confused because they are changing like major update, and they have to learn new things every time. So I try to say go with always minor version, so we stay and we can focus our works and our goal. But when we are moving on major update, then we have to learn something always. So we manage our site or learn something. So that's time killing. That's why I'm thinking that. Thank you.
Yes, the only problem with that is that the next major update for Bckdrop is not scheduled until 2025, I believe, and we're not sure if that's going to happen even then. So we cannot postpone fixing certain things for like another 5 years when there are actual problems. So there has to be a balance. Like some things will need to be fixed before a major update. Some things, but yeah, I agree that it's kind of complicated.
I think, to me, the alternative is to just leave this to Contrib, right? Because, Gregory, the approach that you're suggesting, like, I mean, we could do that. But personally, my advice to people, the audience I'm talking about, would be that if that's the philosophy, then I would recommend people go with a Contrib theme instead. Because that they're going to have less problems, because they won't just arbitrarily have things change. If they have a Contrib theme, they have more control over when things change. And that's fine. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to do that, but it's like, yeah, if that's what that would be my own recommendation to users, is not to use Basis. If we go that route, I would say don't use Basis as your regular theme. Use it, you sub theme from it, great, that's fine, or find a Contrib theme that matches your needs.
So I'm interested in both of your opinions, Tim and Jen, because I know that you guys have been doing a lot of work with themes. And I'm not sure if you're sub-theming bases specifically, but what do you think about the approach of asking people to sort of like copy a specific version if it breaks the site? You don't like that, right? Okay. Is it the security concerns?
Well,
Zen?
so if you've taken an entire theme and made a copy of it, you're sort of like defeating the purpose of using that theme in the first place. Because if you're using something like Basis, one of the benefits of using Basis is that if updates come out to core, you're going to get the updates. And by copying the theme, not only do you not get the updates, which could be like security updates, but now you've got like a copy of an old version and a copy of a new version, which is really confusing when you're like trying to figure out where something's coming from. And to be fair, this is what people did all of the time in Drupal. When you're first learning, you take a copy of Garland or whatever it was, and you throw it into your site and you just start hacking on it. And yeah, it's like a sub theme without any benefits of sub theming. It just seems like
Well, it's not fair to say that everybody was doing it. They were doing it in specific.
Maybe I'll just say that
Yes.
I did when I was learning how to do it, and it wasn't
Yeah.
uncommon. Let's say it's not uncommon, especially in open source. Like you're like, oh, here's a bunch of code I can work with, and having a good starting point is great.
Mhm.
And I didn't learn about sub-theming until like, I don't know, a year and a half or two after I'd been using Drupal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it could do this. And I think, you know, we're sort of in the same boat with Bckdrop, where we've inherited we've got the same tools, we've got the same idea, where there are going to be a bunch of people who are going to be like, oh, open source, grab a theme, whatever. And the more we can do to make Basis a better starting point, the better. It was kind of our goal for Basis when we first set it out. So we want to make something that people can use as a starting point, whether that's, you know, copying it because that's what you think you should do, or whether it's using it as the base theme, or whether it's using it as a regular theme, and just modifying it through the UI. I think those are all good things. But yeah, I don't know. We also had some issues early on with like the color module not working right. If you just copy an entire theme and then you have settings for the core theme, and now you have settings for the contrib theme, and if they have the same name, that's going to be really confusing. So yeah, I just think I don't know that we should tell people to do something that we aren't sure is going to work for them.
So we're not going to say to everyone that updates to copy the theme. So
We
if
can
someone updates their site and they see that it's broken, sorry, go ahead. Hassan.
Yes, we can say about sub-theme. Then we have to make Basis as a more comfortable for a sub-theme, so we can move in hook and everything. So like as Genesis doing in WordPress. So you who want to use sub-theme, go Basic and use the sub-theme, and you will be get a more control on it. So we have to make a sub-theme with a more control with Basis. So Basis is the main theme and core theme. So it's always upgraded. So if we have a sub-theme with more control and comfortable, so we can go with it. That's all.
Yeah. So I was thinking that also, and I think I mentioned that in the issue, is like if you upgrade and you see that your site is broken, even as a workaround, if you want to revert to the previous change not working, and you identify that the problem is the recent change in Basis, right? Under that context, you can always switch to the previous version of Basis. That's what I'm saying, as a temporary workaround until you fix it.
I don't
Right.
think you can count on that though, because there could be like a theme setting that got updated as part of the update, and now you're running an old theme that's depending on a theme setting that's the new setting. It's just it might work. It might work most of the time. I just think it's not a tool we want people to learn is the way to do it, because one day it'll probably bite them.
Can I just
Yeah.
jump in? My objection is simpler, which is just that the user I have in mind is the user who isn't touching their files directly at all, right? It's the user who's got is installed it through Softalicious or whatever, or they've, you know, some other site where they click an installer and they want to configure their theme through the UI, and they're not touching the theme files, right? So if a requirement here is that you have to go in and move themes around or files around in the subtheme,
It's already too much.
then that's not addressing this audience, right? Which, you know, it could be fine, but it doesn't solve the problem that I posed to start with, which is I'm trying to pose an option where you can go in, you can select basis, and you can use it reliably and flexibly without ever looking at the theme files. And we could just decide that that's not realistic. We don't support that for basis.
No, we
And
definitely.
I don't want to do that, but I feel like some people are basically pushing us in that direction, which is where we can't tell a user that they can just use basis through the UI reliably and safely, that they need to, that they have to have skills to go into the files in order to use it reliably and safely.
As an end user, always want to use as a UI. They look their site stable, and first they're lazy. They don't want to work. So it's is core or sub theme. That's not matter. They matter if you update core themes. Always it's not matter if sub themes not broken. They will don't mind. They will say yes, go on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think that we'll be able to make a decision
No,
today.
we're not going to
Of
solve
course,
it.
yes, but yeah.
Okay.
But to put your mind at ease, though, team, it's not that no one is looking at the code, because I personally did look at the code and I still have objections. But yeah,
I just
It
looked at,
hasn't been there long, so
I couldn't find the
yes.
pull request.
So what
Oh,
I
yes.
did, and this might have been a mistake, was I created a new issue, okay? From the decide how to do this, I created a new issue specifically like, let's add supplemental style sheets. And I created a new issue because we hadn't reached any consensus in the other one. And I
Okay.
thought, let's have an issue just focused on that. And that has the pull
One,
request.
two.
And there should be a link
Yeah,
to
so-
it in the main.
Okay.
So the pull request is a proof of concept, but I think you're aware that when you open a pull request, or if you edit the first comment in the pull request and you put the keyword fixes and then a link to the issue, then there's an easy link on the sidebar of the issue that points to the pull request. So people.
I didn't know how to do that. Thank you.
Okay, so all you have to do is just edit your pull request and the first comment and say fixes and then the link of the issue, and it will automatically cross-link it, and
Nice.
people will be able to find it easier.
Nice.
Or all go the old-fashioned way, which is edit the first comment in the issue and just add the link there.
That's usually what I do. Still.
And
Okay.
instead of PR, you can say proof of concept or something like that.
Well, we should move on,
Yes.
possibly to the next meeting, because
Okay. Oh yeah, it's time. Sorry, I got excited about your pull request. Okay, so let's see. There's another issue under design, better defaults for page layouts, specifically placement of header, breadcrumbs, tab, and page title. I don't know if it's worth getting into that today, but if anyone is curious about it, that issue number is 4113. It is labeled needs more feedback. If anyone wants to look down.
I added that to the agenda because I just wanted to talk to you guys about it. But we'll do it later. It's not urgent.
Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up this meeting. We're about to start weekly developer meeting at 1 o'clock. So if anyone is interested in all of the other issues we're working on, you're welcome to rejoin for that. I am going to end this meeting. I've learned that I don't have to cancel the whole thing. I can just stop the recording and then start it up again. So let me try that. Now I'm going to stop the live stream.